Hi everyone, and welcome to The Power of Your Plate, how a vegan diet can save the planet and your health. Just some housekeeping issues to start off with, fire exits. There's one onto the high street, one behind me, and one through the kitchen. This video is also going out on YouTube, so you can share it. It will be called The Power of Your Vegan Plate Guildford, and it'll be up on about Sunday, so very easy to find. Right, let's begin. What's going on in our world? Every newspaper you open, you see heart-wrenching and terrible stories. These range from the recent Russia invading Ukraine, which has the possibility to escalate even into a nuclear crisis. There's questions around climate change, which lead us to ask, will the human species still be around at the year 2100? Or will, in those 85 years, will we have made ourselves extinct? Well, I think everyone in this room here today is here because they have the hope in change. This talk is not to dwell on the negatives, but the positives. And I will attempt to provide answers and responses rather than dwell too much on the causes. Nonetheless, it's useful to look at our recent history to see the goods and bads over the last couple of hundred years. This picture is of the Battle of Gettysburg in 1863 and is the first time photographs could capture the true horror of war. Apartheid that finished in South Africa, but racial segregation still exists. Still in South Africa, to the US, to the banlieues in Paris, and recently we've seen it in the Ferguson shootings. The World War II and the Holocaust of the people was one of the darkest moments in human history. This photo is called The Last Jew of Vinitsa. The Vietnam War, where a smaller country was used as a pawn in the larger Cold War battle between two superpowers. And more recently, the Gaza conflict. This photo shows one woman trying to defend her homeland against Israeli settlement. But out of these terrible and seemingly intractable wrongs that have become our recent past, there is the power of good in all of us. And in response to these very wrongs, there have become changes and social change. In 1863, during the American Civil War, Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, which was the formal end to slavery. The suffragette movement, for the first time in 1918 in UK, women were given a voice in politics. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, signed by countries in 1948, came as a response to those very atrocities that I talked about in the Second World War. The 1963 Martin Luther King I Have a Dream speech is especially poignant. It is one of the breaking points where there is hope for change in the racial segregation that was present in the US. And now, more recently, the Millennium Development Goals. These are common goals taken on by many countries across the world and show a concerted effort and a concern for world poverty. Now, as we know, they're still ongoing, but there's been great advances in areas such as education, health, and gender equality. So all of these wonderful and very good social revolutions have been driven by the overturning of a previously accepted and a very wrong social order. There's been the most poignant moments in our human history when the bravery of a few have stood up to many and said, no, this is wrong, it can't go on. There is one revolution that is due, and it's long due, and that is a dietary one. In most cultures, there has been the indoctrination since birth of a lifestyle where consumption of animal products is normal. It is now time to break this hegemony and challenge this traditional wrong. As you will see throughout this talk, this dietary revolution is so important, both for the future of our planet and our own health and well-being. And in particular, I will look at 4 aspects. I will look at the effect of diet on environment, the effect it has on bringing about war or preventing it, the effect on the animals themselves, and then your own health. So first, we'll just have a look at the environmental issues. production is more resource intensive than vegetable production. A 1997 study by Cornell University Ecology Department showed the various resource use of certain foods. This chart shows how many gallons of water are used to produce just 1 pound of each food. At the top there, you have beef. 5,000, just over, gallons of water go to producing 1 pound of beef. Whereas down at the bottom, tomatoes, potatoes, lettuce, your vegetables, that's about 20 gallons of water to produce 1 pound of those foods. Vegetables in this graph use about 200 times less water than beef in their production. This graph is greenhouse gas intensity of various food groups. And this graph shows how many pounds of CO2 were released into the atmosphere to produce just 1 pound of the food product. Again, top of your list, beef releases 54 pounds of CO2 into the atmosphere for every pound of beef. Whereas your vegetable base are just a couple or 3. That's 27 times less greenhouse gas intensive vegetables than meat. Finally, this graph shows land usage, the amount of people that can be fed on 1 hectare of land. Your meat and dairy, it's just about 1 or 2 people per hectare of land can be kept fed. Whereas potatoes and cabbage, about 20 times more people can be fed on the same amount of land. Now, if one does eat organic meats are a lot more resource intensive than factory farmed produced meats, so you can multiply those figures by about 1.5 to 2.5 times. Quite a groundbreaking study by the United Nations in 2006 called Livestock's Long Shadow states, livestock production on its own produces more greenhouse gases than all the world's cars, ships, trains, and planes combined. But a World Bank ecologist took this even a stage further. He looked at the effect of the 1,000 years of deforestation, slash and burn agriculture, the amount of plants and trees that are no longer there, sucking the CO2 out of our atmosphere, and the environmentally damaging effects from the CO2 released. He found when all these were added together, 51% of all climate change can be attributed to livestock production. That's over half all climate change can be attributed to eating meat, fish, and dairy. So, with this crisis that we're facing, what should people give up? You need to give up animal foods. I think everyone does care for the environment deeply, but let's be realists here. You want to live in a nice house, go on holiday, drive cars, go shopping and socialise and see your friends. You want to party. All of these things are very dear. Kyoto and the 14 additional United Nations climate change conferences have all fallen extremely short. However, if everyone on this planet continued as they were but just went vegan tomorrow, every single one of these climate change initiatives would be met in every single country easily. All that you would have to change about your life is what you put on your plate. Next, we will have a quick look on how diet has a part to play in war. There are 2 main ways an animal-based diet causes war and violence in this world. The first is the psychological effects of eating meat, which I will dwell on later. But leading on from the last environmental section, I will look at the resource usage of animal food consumption. Today, at the start of the 21st century, we have habitat destruction, glacial retreat, species extinction. We have mass starvation, pollution, global warming. You can see from the news, war is becoming an ever more common occurrence in Gaza, Syria, Libya. Also, the recent annexation of the Ukraine from Russia, as I mentioned, could escalate into all-out nuclear war. Livestock production is extremely resource intensive, as I have already said, and this is a key contributor to the aggression between countries. If we gave up eating animal-based foods, the competition would get less. The other option is pretty stark, to be honest. The human population will climb to beyond 9 billion by 2050. Animal usage today, 150 billion animals are killed per year. In 2050, it will be over 200 billion if we continue as we are. Competition for land, if we don't change, will become more fierce, and wars increasingly will be fought over resources. Resources such as fresh water, food, and we may even be reduced to fighting for clean air to breathe. Second, we have the psychological effects of eating meat. And these are some quotes from some scholars and scientists who are all vegetarian and vegan. It is so important to recognize where our food comes from. It is the way we interact with the world. The bounty that nature gives us nourishes us, and it is us. Food is fundamental to many societies, and many cultures define themselves by their traditional dishes. The fate of the planet rests on what we put on our plates. Food that is consists of damaging processed meats, that's resource intensive, that harms animals, and instead of nourishing us, is detrimental to our health, will have a bad effect on society. A plate that consists of vegetables that are not so resource intensive, that do not harm animals, that are good for our health with a minimal carbon footprint and help poverty and starvation, are good for society. This is quite black and white. A plant-based diet has a positive effect on the world and yourself. An animal-based diet has a negative effect on the world and your health, and teaches that extermination of living beings is fine, socially accepted, and should not be criticised.
Nobel Prize winner Isaac Bashevis Singer wrote in his best-selling novel, Enemies, A Love Story, the following. As often as Herman had witnessed the slaughter of animals and fish, he always had the same thought. In their behavior toward creatures, all men were Nazis. The smugness with which man could do with other species as he pleased exemplified the most extreme racist theories. The principle that might is right. The comparison here to the Holocaust is both intentional and obvious. One group of living beings anguishes beneath the hands of another. Though some will argue the suffering of animals cannot possibly compare with that of former Jews or slaves, there is, in fact, a parallel. And for the prisoners and victims of this mass murder, their Holocaust is far from over.
So now we will move on to the effect of diet on animals. So meat consumption is depicted on this diagram as the average meat eater's consumption of animals in a lifetime. It totals 4 cows, 4 sheep, 12 geese, 37 ducks, 46 pigs, 46 turkeys, 945 chickens. Fish are actually left off this because there are too many to show. There would be over 3,000 of them. This over 1,000 land animals and 3,000 marine animals that are killed because of one person's dietary choice. This is the bigger picture, and it's too large a number to comprehend. But let's not look at the bigger picture. Let's not treat animals as statistics or numbers, but as individual sentient beings. I recently read a magazine article of some animal rights activists who went to a pig farm, and they were going to take video of the conditions there. And they walked past a pen marked sick animals, and one of the animals was a female pig, a sow, with a C chalked on her back, which was for cull. One of the animal activists, one of the men, had an apple in his pocket, and so the pig struggled onto her leg despite having one gangrenous back leg, and came over and ate the apple. And after she had finished, she licked the man on the hand, as if to say thank you. The infinite capacity for forgiveness of this pig. She'd spent her whole life in a shed, had her piglets ripped away from her, had her body and her health steadily destroyed by lack of sunlight and food, and was full of artificial drugs that instead of nourishing her, she saw her health sap away day by day. And she was still prepared to lick the hand of the man, of the species that 4 days later would also cut her throat and take away the torturous little existence that she ever had on this planet. When I read that story, I found it so desperately sad, and I couldn't continue with a diet that even makes one creature suffer like this because of my choices. But it is not just one. This story happens 1,000 times over for each person. So why is it important to know where animal products come from? I started this talk by saying there is compassion in all of us, and it is why there is hope for the future. Ironically, this compassion in all of us is one of the biggest barriers to progressing with dietary reform, because there is such a taboo about facing where in fact our meat comes from. People inherently know that it is wrong, but they feel very guilty about it. This guilt means that society suppresses the knowledge of this continued holocaust against the animals. This compassion of guilt that hides where the meat comes from is something that cannot be suppressed, and everyone should be shown the truth throughout upbringing, from birth through education. People have the right, and indeed it's essential that they know the effect it has on animals, but also the effect it has on their health. I'd like just to mention my mother, who is sitting in the audience and is a tireless campaigner for animal rights, and I'm sure most of you know her. And she's a very accomplished school speaker. Sadly, for the reasons that I've listed, of people not wanting to recognise where their meat comes from, quite a while ago she was put in prison for trying to share the truth, for spreading free speech, and she was a prisoner of conscience. This is the article that went around in the Surrey Advertiser. Luckily, times have changed, and the police that prosecuted her previously are now actually one of her biggest backers and realise how important her campaign is. Thank you, Mum. So do after this talk, if you have a school that she can speak in, or indeed a university, do go and speak to her afterwards. So in light of what I've just said, and how important it is to look at where our meat comes from, let's look at the effect of a few food products.
sorry. I know you're trying to do good, but I can't watch it. You should have warned us.
I don't like to see it because it's that, but it has to be told. Well,
That's fine. That's fine.
That's just be calm. That's just calm.
it's also quite loud.
I'll turn it down.
I'm at a bank and I'm actually Andrew, I haven't watched it. I'd like to see it. It is upsetting, but people need to know.
That's all. It is important to see, as I've said. Now, your health. There was a recent BBC documentary, and it was by Dr. Mosley. I don't know if you saw it or not. It was called "Should I Eat Meat? The Big Health Dilemma." And this tried to gauge if meat was or was in fact not healthy. And not trying to discredit the programme, but it was a very convoluted way of missing out on a basic truth. This doctor attempted to justify the wish to eat meat and offer a warm safety blanket by detailing a very improbable set of conditions that most people just simply could not live by. I'm not here to deal with semantics, but practical issues. And this is also not the place that I wish to debate, are we closer in origin to the gorilla or a certain type of chimpanzee? The home truth is that eating meat in the modern world is unhealthy. The diet of most animal consumers. You have a meal in a restaurant, and the chances are the meat is of a much lower quality. If you had that bacon sandwich because you couldn't make breakfast, rushing on the way to work, it's got a lot of fried carcinogens in it, and it's chock full of saturated fat. There is no way in our busy lives to eat meat healthily, and a lot of people's consumption creeps up on them. They don't realise how much they eat. If you eat bacon, sausages, salami, ham, kebabs, eggs, these are packed full of cholesterol, saturated fats, toxins, and carcinogens, and the more that's consumed, the more detrimental it is to a person's health. The very basis of animal production is to increase the yield of each animal. That is to get the most amount of flesh, pound for pound, from each animal in the shortest space of time. That's how a livestock company will make their profits. To achieve this, they'll pump animals full of growth hormone, stop them doing exercise, and stop disease in the conditions that they're kept in, with a powerful cocktail of drugs. What is eaten, at the end of the day, is an obese freak of nature, full of chemicals and drugs, and that it has been proven to increase the chances of cancers, heart disease, diabetes, arthritis, strokes, dementia, the list goes on. There is another very big disadvantage about being at the very top of the food chain. A lot of the toxins, drugs and chemicals are passed down from food level to food level. As I mentioned, animals are fed growth hormones, they're fed antibiotics, and these toxins and chemicals are passed to us in our position of food super predator. There's, in the end, a lot of ingestion of steroids, heavy metals, which are especially from fish in the polluted oceans, chemical residues, antibiotics and steroids. And because of the passing down of these toxins, prions got into the human food chain, which is the cause of mad cow disease. Organic meat will not escape the majority of these toxins, as they're passed down in exactly the same way. There is so much cross-contamination at every stage of the meat process that if the meat is largely disease-free before the slaughterhouse, after it is killed, it mixes with what is on the slaughterhouse floor, which is blood, feces, and also in this dirty environment, there's a lot of bacteria such as Salmonella and E. coli. And when the carcass is hung up and washed down with a high-pressure hose, instead of getting rid of it, a lot of these dirts and bacteria are in fact washed straight back into the pores and are served on the supermarket shelves when they're consumed. Just to demonstrate the health benefits between a vegetable diet and a meat-based diet, I will touch upon one killer, which is cancer.
All animal, bird, fish, or egg-derived protein plays a role in the formation and promotion of cancer. But the most potent so far is casein. Howard Lyman is a fourth-generation cattle rancher. In 1979, he developed cancer in the spinal cord. Today, Howard Lyman goes around the world talking about the harmful effects of animal protein.
The first thing I recommend is to take out dairy. Remember, I was born on a dairy farm, the largest dairy farm in the state of Montana. I believe that milk was nature's most perfect food. I believe that milk did a body good. But today I say the first thing you should take out of your diet is dairy. And the reason, 87% of the protein in dairy products is a thing called casein. Casein has been shown in laboratory tests to stimulate the growth of cancerous cells, just like pouring gasoline on a fire.
Casein is even more concentrated in dairy such as cheese and skim milk from cows, goats, and sheep. The connection between dairy intake and cancer is particularly strong for prostate cancer. Prostate cancer is now the most commonly diagnosed cancer among men in the United States and other Western countries. It represents about 25% of all cancers.
People who consume more animal protein have more so-called insulin-like growth factor, IGF or IGF-1, and they have more of this hormone when they're consuming animal protein-based foods. And that in turn is consistent with increases in risk for prostate cancer. We know that insulin growth factor tends to turn on cancers. Those findings originated with a comparison of, let's say, vegetarians with vegans. Vegetarians, 90% of whom are consuming substantial amounts of dairy products and eggs, still getting a lot of animal protein. They haven't gained that much by just avoiding meat and then still consuming a lot of dairy and eggs. In terms of animal protein, they're still consuming a lot of animal protein. It just comes in a different form. And those people, the vegetarians, tend to have higher levels of this insulin-like growth factor than do the vegans, who, of course, are avoiding all animal proteins and getting less prostate cancer, by the way.
As many as 50% of all men over 70 years have a silent form of prostate cancer, which is not yet causing problems. Studies have revealed that men with the highest dairy intakes had about double the risk of total prostate cancer and up to 4 times the risk of fatal or metastatic whole body spread of prostate cancer compared to low dairy food consumers.
The quickest and easiest change that you can make to your health is to go vegan. Again, it's a very simple message. Going vegan, you immediately cut out the foods which are highest in saturated fat and have no fibre. Meats are very high in fat and have no fibre. Vegetables are by and large much lower in fat and much lower in saturated fat and contain a lot of fibre. High in vitamins, minerals, amino acids and antioxidants. Many people go on detoxes where they'll, for a month, eat less pizza or give up kebabs after their post-work beers. But it's so time-consuming and stressful. You've always got to think what you eat. You know exactly where you stand if you go vegan. You simply don't eat those foods. You will find you'll be effortlessly healthy and your body will go towards its ideal weight. If you go vegan, you'll be slimmer. The likelihood is that you'll live longer. You'll feel fresher and more energetic and be less generally ill. Vegans can look to live on average about 3 to 6 years longer at the moment than a heavy meat eater. And they can look forward to an old age much more, spending the last years of their life without degenerative diseases. What a wonderful gift this is if you just change what you put on your plate and you can completely sidestep with a much greater likelihood finishing the last years on life being in a wheelchair, being incontinent or being senile. You may well have heard of Ella, of the Deliciously Ella fame, which is at the moment circulating all the bookshops. Just to give a quick summary of her story, she suffered from a rare congenital disease, which is a disease inherited by birth. And she had a whole host of health problems, from constant headaches to heart palpitations to the inability to digest a lot of her foods. Her diet wasn't that unusual. She ate a lot of meat-based products and had quite a low fruit and vegetable intake. At her wit's end in the medical profession being unable to help her, she did her own research and overnight changed to a vegan plant-based diet, but also cut out gluten and a lot of additives in foods and sugars. Within 18 months, she was off the drugs that she was put on and was able to go to the gym again, go running, go swimming, lead a normal life. Now, what's quite inspiring about this story, apart from her transformation, is her passion to share the knowledge, to let people know how easy good health is, how easy it is to grasp. And so have a read of her book. It contains some nice recipes as well. A lot of people say, what about protein? Where can you get it in vegetables? In fact, there's an abundance of protein in vegetables, and there's quite a lot of vegan bodybuilders. Here's a few.
This is James Madison, the Healthy Engineer, and it's my pleasure to be next to the famous Robert Cheek.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So, a lot of people don't know, he wrote a book called Vegan Bodybuilding and Fitness.
Yeah.
And he's got some incredible photos online of his physique during his bodybuilding phase.
Back in the old days. It's been a couple of years, but yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
So, you're unique with bodybuilders because you don't eat any meat and you don't do any any animal products, like whey protein, no eggs, or anything like that.
Not for 17 years.
So explain to my viewers where to get your protein from.
Yeah, so very easy to, so protein is found in all foods. Smaller amounts in some foods, large amounts in others, especially dark greens, beans and other legumes, nuts, seeds, and other foods like tofu, tempeh, seitan, things like that. But in general, protein is so easy to get, and really we only need about 10% of our calories from protein. So that's very easy to find. That's on just a pure vegetable diet, you would achieve that based on the macronutrient breakdown of foods. Any given food, their percentage of that food, it'll say potato, of its carbohydrate, protein, and fat, etc. Almost all foods will fall into that category to have 10% or more. So very easy to come by.
Wow.
Eat greens, eat beans, eat other legumes, eat nuts, eat seeds, eat fruits. Just have a healthy plant-based variety and you're set.
Wow, that's proof. I mean, obviously, you've had success with it.
I started at 120 pounds.
Wow.
vegan at age 15 and got up to 195 pounds. So, and many people on my website have done more interesting and amazing transformations.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening.
All right, eat your best, be your best.
Absolutely.
All right, thanks a lot, man.
You bet. Take action, make it happen.
All right.
They're all vegan, all those bodybuilders at the end of the video. Now, excuse the inherent narcissism in the next couple of photos, but I'd like to tell my own story of marathon running and the other exercise I do. The picture on the right is me in 2013 finishing the London Marathon. I got a time of 2 hours 46 minutes, which is a personal best for myself, and I haven't beaten it yet, but that's ongoing. And that's just about 40 minutes behind the world record. On a vegan diet, I'm able to run longer, but the key is my body repairs faster, which is very important for marathon running. I didn't get the injuries, especially in my joints and my knees, that many other runners get. So I was healthy on marathon day. I've done 3 marathons in the last 3 years, and I always place about in the top 0.1%. And I think a large part of that is down to my vegan diet. Not only do I run marathons, and I'm passionate about that, but I do a lot of weight training, and I find that I do put on muscle quickly, but I also keep the fat off. So for me, the proof of the pudding has been in the eating. So what do you need to do if you're not vegan at the moment and you step out of the room and want to make the change, you want to go vegan, you think it's right, but you just have got this barrier of fear in your mind that it is so difficult that you can't eat anything. Fear not is actually incredibly easy. So let's look at the traditional Sunday roast, a familiar sight, and you will find with this dish you actually, to make it vegan, need to change very little. You got your potatoes, roast potatoes, keep them, they're vegan. You got your roasted veg, keep them, they're vegan, no change here. You've got your gravy and vegetable stock gravy, again, vegan, keep them. All you need to change on this plate, and the only thing that you actually need to consider, is your protein section. And here we've got the very stereotypical, quite vanilla nut roast that everybody seems to think vegans eat all their lives. Well, there's a host of different food products out there in the UK at the moment. There's a rich abundance of products. Got Linda McCartney sausages. Roast them, put them with some mashed potato, pour some portobello mushroom gravy on top. Winner. You've got teriyaki seitan stir fry. Just sprinkle some chili over the top, bit of coriander, you're away. You've got something that is a little bit of an addiction of mine, which is vegan cheese. Put it on pizza, put it in paninis. You're not giving up anything so far. Tofu is tasteless, a lot of people say. Well, they've never seen it like this before. You grill it, put a bit of rosemary and garlic granules on it, and then citrus over the top. Delicious. So, as I said, there are so many vegan products out there. You'll find vegan sausages, steaks, burgers, ham. These all taste almost identical to their meat counterparts. The difference is, they're just healthier. There's falafel, there's lentil burgers, tofu, tempeh, soya, seitan. These have almost none of the saturated fats of the meats, but they have the same levels of protein. For your dairy products, you have soy milk, cream, yogurt, and then as we just saw, that vegan cheese board. From mozzarella to cheddar. There are beefless beef burgers, there's meatless meatballs. There's mince, bacon, chicken strips, shrimps. I think you get the idea. Have an explore. What you need to do, if you haven't already, you need to find a good health food shop and have a look round and see how many vegan products you can have. There's one in Guildford. It's just off North Street by the HSBC. If you don't know where it is, it's called Food for Thought. If you haven't been in it yet, have a look round and buy some stuff for your vegan.
Holland and Barrett as well.
Holland and Barrett is good as well. And there's one in Manchester called Unicorn if you're ever there, which is 100% vegan. It's such a nice shop to look round. It even gives you a good feeling. You feel as if the food shop actually cares about your health, which unlike Sainsbury's and Tesco's, I'm sure they don't. So there you've got enough to make in a vegan dinner tonight. You've also got your recipe books. So I'd just like to sum up everything in this talk and bring it together. We started with the environmental damage that meat farming causes. And it has been to date the single most damaging activity to our planet's ecosystem. Another century of this, if we don't change as we are, this could well end the human race. Whereas animal production is very resource intensive, vegetable production is not. A vegan diet will therefore reduce starvation around the world, and if we go vegan, it will reverse the effects of climate change and help the poverty around the nations. A change to a vegan diet, as you saw before, will directly, per person, mean that 100 land-based animals and 3,000 marine animals are not killed for a lifetime's worth of consumption of meat. Finally, going vegan is very likely to mean that you are healthier at all stages of your life. You will feel more athletic. So you can now go and dust off your marathon shoes and look forward to powerlifting at age 90. So take the recipe books home, cook yourself a delicious vegan dinner tonight, and if you're not already, I hope you look forward to stepping into the world as a vegan. Thank you all for coming. Thanks.